Dungeons & Dragons is probably the most popular tabletop role-playing system, but it's far from being the only one. There are many other game systems, each with its own set of rules. But why are there so many different systems? Can't we just use the same one for everything? To answer that, I'm going to talk about the purpose of game mechanics in tabletop role-playing games. We'll show some examples of how different rules change the choices that game masters and players make. We'll also cover some guidelines and tips on homebrewing mechanics for your favorite games. Ready? Let's go. What's up, Butterfumps? My name is Aviad and I make videos that help game masters craft the best experience they can. Today we're doing it with game systems. If you've played any tabletop RPGs before, then the concept of game systems would be very clear. They help us translate our decisions into outcomes within the game world. If, for example, the system supports combat, my character should be able to strike an opponent with a sword. Without any game mechanics to cover that, it's only up to the GM to decide what happens as a result. But that can get very old very quickly. Instead, the system uses game mechanics to help us determine the outcome. In Dungeons & Dragons, I'd roll a 20-sided die, take the result, and add the number that represents how good I am at swinging said sword to the total number. That total is then compared to another number that determines how hard it is to hit my target. If my total is equal to or higher than the target number, I hit. Otherwise, I miss. This is all an effort to create a better simulation of combat while accounting for my character's strengths and weaknesses. And D&D does combat quite well, but not all games are about that. Some systems don't pay any attention to combat, which really tells us something about how the creators intended us to play them. In Dread, there is no combat system. If your character wants to throw a chair to distract the chainsaw murderer, you'll use the exact same mechanic that you'd use for any other challenge. All you have to do is successfully pull a block from a Jenga tower. If you've pulled it successfully, whatever you try to do works. But if the tower falls... I just taught you how to play Dread, by the way. It's really that simple. Dread is an amazing choice for horror because the adrenaline from the story mixes with the tension of pulling blocks from the tower. Everyone's on edge all the time. It's brilliant, really. So these are two games that handle the decisions very differently, but neither is better than the other. It all depends on the type of game you want to play. Sure, you can run horror games using D&D, but since it's a lot more combat oriented, your players are much more likely to choose to fight the danger instead of running from it. It should come as no surprise to any of us, really. The game gives the players so many options specifically for combat. Can we really blame them for using them? Unfortunately, the players choosing fight over flight will push the game towards the heroic, which might not be what you intended for a horror game. That's why it's important to choose a game system that aligns with the genre of the game that you want to play. That being said, you can still run horror using D&D, but your horror will look and feel different, and that has to be taken into account. So we've covered how different systems deal with decision making, and also how the mere existence of a game mechanic influences the choices that the players make. But a game system can influence the way we act in character as well, not just what our character does, but how it behaves. One example for that is the humanity system in Vampire the Masquerade. In VTM, vampires are in constant struggle with their inner beast, the bloodthirsty and primal creature that resides within each of them. Humanity, then, represents how connected they are to their human part. The more human they are, the better they are at resisting the urges of the beast. Some acts can reduce the character's humanity, but regaining it is no small feat. If a vampire kills a human, for example, their humanity score might drop. It will become increasingly harder to control the beast, and they are much more likely to enter the state of frenzy, where they have no control over their character's actions. If your character's humanity ever reaches 1, you just stop playing it. The beast takes over completely. This mechanic affects the way we roleplay our character and creates more consequences for their choices. It also gives us hints on how to portray our character's struggles. The storyteller, which is the game masters in VTM, can use a low humanity score to inspire roleplay for your character. They can describe how delicious the person you're speaking with smells, and just how hungry you are. A quick plug to our amazing Discord community where I got so many video ideas. If you like the content of this video, you're going to love the people on Discord. You can find the link to join us in the description below. Game systems can also give us more tools when it comes to storytelling. One great example for that is the narrative dice in the Fantasy Flight game systems. Aside from determining success and failure, the dice can add advantages, threats, despairs, and triumphs. These results make for a more interesting outcome than mere success or failure, and the players work with the GM to determine how these results translate into the narrative. Let's say your character attempts to climb a wall and you roll 1 failure and 2 advantages. You can then decide that after failing their own attempt, your character makes a handhold for their allies as a step to push them up the wall. This translates into more positive dice for the next character that tries to make the climb. This is a fantastic way to encourage your players to be more creative with their descriptions. If you want to watch the power of narrative dice in action, check out Tabletop Galaxy. It's a cool Star Wars RPG live play with awesome people on it. Tell them I said hi. Now that we understand what role mechanics play, let's talk about homebrews. Homebrews are a great way for you to tweak a game system to fit your game better. The first step in creating a new mechanic is identifying what it lacks. But step 0 would be learning how it works by the book. That's a prerequisite to this entire process, because if you don't understand it properly, you might add something that breaks it without even noticing. My friend the Dungeon Coach makes amazing homebrews for D&D 5th edition, because he understands how the game works and what it lacks. One example for a great homebrew is the fix he made for the short and long rest mechanics in D&D. He realized that characters in D&D are superheroes.
Oh, it's fine.
It's fine.
We're gods!
They can nearly bleed out and die one day and behave as if nothing happened the next. System-wise, the player characters recover all of their hit points when they finish a long rest. That can create some absurd situations where characters just go to sleep whenever they're low on health, no matter what they were doing or how long ago they actually woke up. So we've recognized the issue and now we're ready to make some changes. The next step is defining the preferred goal. It's not enough to say that the current system is not working, we need to figure out what the new system will do. Our goal is to make the healing a bit slower, so the players think carefully about their hit points as a resource. But we don't want the game to grind to a halt. This is still a heroic fantasy game, and your character should still be able to do some amazing things and get away with it. The Dungeon Coach changed how short and long rests work, and also introduced a third type of rest that is called a full rest. I'm not going to showcase the whole thing because he explained it so much better than I can, but you can check out this video here or down in the description. The only spoiler I'll give you is that this homebrew removed the automatic healing from long rest. You can still regain hit points by spending hit dice like in a short rest, but since you only regain half of your hit dice back, doing that will actually leave you weaker in the following day. After thinking of the mechanic and writing it all down, we need to check and see if it does what we intended. We should examine our goal again. Does it actually make healing slower while keeping the game heroic? Yes, it does. Good. The next question we should ask ourselves is, does it affect any other mechanic within the system? The new rest mechanic has implications. Some are more obvious than others, like the fact that healers are likely to spend all of their remaining spell slots on healing before the long rest, because they still get their spell slots back. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because it will leave them powerless should they be ambushed at night. Other than that, not many implications come to mind. The change feels sound, and we can present it to our group and start playtesting it in the next game session. Creating an entirely new mechanic is more difficult than altering an existing one. And generally speaking, I believe we should always make the minimum amount of change required to achieve our goal. But some things just don't exist within the rules. The Player's Handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide don't give us any rules to handle mass combat. That's when two armies clash. Remember that epic scene from Lord of the Rings? Well, prepare to roll a lot of initiatives. Can you actually imagine how that would work? When I wanted my players to feel the chaos of mass combat, I used a regular combat encounter that represented their immediate surroundings. But I also added special environmental effects that happened on initiative count 20 and 10. Things like a rain of arrows, a giant flaming boulder, or a mountain combatant that joins the fight for one round before riding elsewhere. That's a nice flavor to add to existing fights, but it doesn't actually help us decide which army prevails. Since the game system does not support that, we'll need a new game mechanic. The steps to creating a new mechanic are essentially the same, so I won't go in depth into them in this video, but here's a speedrun. Recognize the gap in the current system. Define the goal of the new game mechanic. What is it supposed to accomplish? Write down a draft for the mechanic. Does this mechanic actually accomplish the goal? What other implications does it have on the system? After all that, playtest it. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button with your mage hand. If we can get 100 likes on this, I'll make a sequel where we talk about system design. There are plenty of things we should think about when we create an entirely new system, and I felt like this video was getting too long already. So if that subject interests you, that's how you let me know. Oh, and tell me about your favorite mechanic in the comments. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you want to see more of me on the internet. And remember that you are awesome, keep being awesome, and I'll see you beyond the screen.